We start with a statement response by the Chair of Health to an issue raised by Esther Passaris.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, as the Chairperson of Departmental Committee on Health, I rise to give a statement on matters concerning the death of Mr. Kinyua, which has elicited a lot of debate among members of the public and raised concerns regarding the safety and security of patients and staff in health facilities. In response to these concerns, Honorable Speaker, the committee visited Kenyatta National Hospital on Friday, 21st February 2025, to clarify the issues raised. Mr. Kinyua was referred to Kenyatta National Hospital from St. Mary's Hospital, Langata on December 11, 2024, and was admitted to Ward 7B, which specializes in the management of patients with nervous disorders, that is neurological disorders. At admission, Mr. Kinyua had pressure sores, wounds within the pressure points, resulting from prolonged immobility. After an evaluation by KNH specialists, Mr. Kinyua was diagnosed with a rare neurological disorder known as Guillain-Barré syndrome that causes muscle weaknesses. His condition was particularly severe, affecting all his limbs, that is the hands and the legs. He therefore required total nurse care, including tube feeding. Despite the severity of his condition, his status had remained stable under KNH care. On Thursday, 6 February 2025, Mr. Kinyua's condition was observed to be stable and the day proceeded as normal. The night shift team took over without noting any undue concerns. The nursing staff attended to him at 9 p.m., midnight, and at 3 a.m. in the morning, and no abnormalities were reported during these routine checks. On circumstances surrounding the death of Mr. Kinyua, the acting CEO, Kenyatta National Hospital, Dr. William Sikilai, who is a physician, informed the committee that in the early morning of Friday, 7th February, during the nurses' ward rounds at approximately 6 a.m., the late Kinyua was found with his face covered by a blood-stained sheath. Upon uncovering him, the nurses discovered that he was motionless with a cut wound on his neck. Immediately, the nurse reported the incident and the respective teams were notified for action. Within 30 minutes, the DCI was notified and arrived at the scene. The family members, that's the wife and brother to the deceased, arrived within an hour. The body was moved to the mortuary within the day. The chief security officer informed the committee that Kenyatta National Hospital has an elaborate security system in place, including CCTV cameras in common areas. Additionally, the hospital has officers from the National Police Service station within the hospital and in close proximity to the Kenyatta police posts. In light of this incident, the hospital has heightened and enhanced security measures across the hospital to ensure the safety of more than 1,800 patients, staff, and all visitors. The interventions on patient security and safety by Kenyatta National Hospital. On KNH security and safety governance instruments, the hospital has developed a security and safety strategy, policies, and standard operating procedures. The hospital security human resources comprise of 3 distinct teams that collaborate in ensuring security and safety. These include Kenyatta National Hospital employees, who are 119, outsourced security services 261, and National Police Service officers, together with the NSIS officers. The hospital has installed 331 CCTV cameras and has established a security communication center, which is monitored on 24-hour basis and respecting patients' privacy. On multi-agency approach, the hospital has established partnerships and collaborations with institutions within the KNH complex, that is KMTC, University of Nairobi, Government Chemist, KEMRI, National Radiology, Ministry of Health, Afya Annex, as well as other state agencies, including NIS, DCI, Kenya Police, Kenya Prison Services, and other institutional arrangements. To maintain continuity of care of patients, the wards are manned on 24-hour basis by clinical staff, including nurses, who work in shifts. In addition, there are established protocols and guidelines and work instructions to support the execution of respective functions. Besides the existing interventions, the hospital further seeks to enhance its safety and security mechanisms in the following ways: construction of modern gates and entry points with modern access control capabilities, acquisition and installation of electric security management system with biometric, radio frequency identification, and visitors management system. Prioritization of KNH as a strategic government installation for provision of armed security on 24-hour basis, 7 days a week by the Critical Infrastructure Protection Unit, and securing the hospital from external threats by erecting a perimeter wall across the hospital with designated entry points. Honorable Speaker, the committee made the following key observations from its engagements with the hospital management. For improved security and safety for patients and hospital staff, the hospital to strengthen its internal security. The current focus for hospital has largely been on external threats. 2, the pet mate of the late Gilbert Kinyua had been officially discharged by the hospital. However, he remained within the hospital since he was homeless. The said patient was being treated and had been diagnosed with diabetes and convulsions and was later taken to a shelter through the hospital's intervention. The shelter had, however, refused to keep the said patient owing to this disruptive behavior. The patient has been experiencing convulsions, which has medically been proven that such convulsions may sometimes manifest as convulsive behavior, where a person acts without later recalling their actions. Owing to this patient's medical diagnosis, the acting CEO of the hospital informed the committee that the patient's fingerprints had been taken to the National Registration Bureau for further investigation, together with the knife. The prevailing security measures at the hospital were put in place after a previous state of a patient at the hospital in 2015. That's 10 years ago. At that time, the hospital had only 12 CCTV cameras. But since then, the hospital has acquired and installed 331 CCTV cameras. The hospital has also 119 in-house security employees and 216 outsourced security services, as well as officers from the National Police Service. The post-mortem on the body of the late Gilbert Kinyua was conducted in the presence of both government and independent family pathologists. The samples from the post-mortem were sent to the government chemist for analysis. As at the time of the committee's visit to the hospital, the post-mortem results were not yet released to the hospital, but had been handed over to the DCI. The hospital receives nearly 30,000 visitors daily, who should pass through screening system, which will help to prevent weapons from being brought into the hospital. Honorable Speaker, the committee made the following recommendations: that the Director of Criminal Investigation to urgently finalize investigations on this unfortunate death and recommend appropriate action with a view of establishing and holding accountable the person responsible for the death of Mr. Gilbert Kinyua. 2, that the Board of Kenyatta National Hospital to audit the hospital's internal security systems within 1 month so as to identify possible security breaches, in particular internal security threats, and come up with mitigation measures for necessary implementation. The report of the audit to be shared with the committee, which shall access the areas that may be allocated funds during the budgetary process. In conclusion, the matter is actively before the committee. Further, the matter is under investigation by the Director of Criminal Investigation, and the suspect is still under the custody of the hospital. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Yes, you've listened to the statement. Give.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'm I had noticed that the committee were at Kenyatta National Hospital while I was away at Pan-African Parliament. But my question is not fully answered. But let me deal with the issue of Gilbert Kinyua. The family actually got in touch with me when I was in South Africa and asked, what do we do? The hospital has said they're going for a postmortem and we need to have our own doctor. I quickly got in touch with a few doctors and I managed to get the family a doctor to represent them and settle the money of 25,000 for them to be able to have their own independent doctor. They want, the Kenyatta National Hospital has waived they've waived the hospital fee as well as the mortuary charges. But what I'm a bit concerned about is this is not the first time that we're having a death in Kenyatta National Hospital. We had one on 29th of November 2015, Mr. Cosmos Mutunga was found dead. And now that we have the second incident at Kenyatta National Hospital, I believe that from the first one to the second one, if we had improved the security at that point, then why is it that that particular ward was not covered with CCTV? I want to know whether the CCTV cameras 331 were installed after the incident of Gilbert or after the incident of Mr. Cosmos Mutunga. We also have another incident that happened in Moi Teaching and Referral Hospital, Eldoret. Mr. Albert Chisang he was missing from the hospital bed, and then on the 29th of January he went missing from the hospital, and then on the 9th of February his body was found decomposed near the hospital. So right now my biggest concern and the question that I asked is, what are we doing about investigations? I know it is probably not the Ministry of Health that does the investigation, but we have to have a multi-sectorial approach, because the investigations are what are going to be able to help us improve the quality and duty of care for the patients, the staff of the hospital. The second thing that I want to ask is, what about compensation? Here you are today. The family is looking for over 400,000 to give their loved one a burial, and they don't even have that money. They didn't even have the money for the postmortem to have an independent doctor. In this particular case, what is the duty of care? What is the compensation that the family is going to get? Because Susan is young with 2 young children. It's not enough just to waive the hospital bill and to waive the mortuary charges. They have a burial. They also have children that need to go to school. They have counseling needs for the entire family. So since the government should be culpable, what are the compensations that do they have insurance? Is there a way and a mechanism to compensate this family, not just this one, but all the other families? And what is the status of the investigation? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, Dr. Bukose.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I hear the Honorable Esther Passaris. I think the basic facts that we should be able to put in place is that Gilbert Kinyua was paralyzed before being admitted in the hospital. He had Guillain-Barré syndrome, severe form, where he could not move his limbs, both the hands and the legs. And he was paralyzed in the hospital and being fed with a tube.
Is responding to what you have asked?
And being fed with a tube. The hospital was taking care of him. The hospital has cooperated with the DCI in terms of investigations that are ongoing, so that the culprit can be brought into book and the justice be delivered. I don't think at this stage we should be discussing the issue of compensation. There is a mechanism for which compensation can be sought. And at this stage, I think it is too premature for us to start thinking of compensation. Secondly, you've asked about the CCTV cameras, the 331, whether they were put after the incident of Kinyua or after the 2015 incident. They were put after the 2015 incident. As of the issue about the issue of Eldoret, I think that is not a matter that is before the committee, and therefore I cannot be able to respond on that issue. And the Honorable Esther Passaris, while she was in South Africa, she asked me for the number of Dr. Sikilai. At that time, the CEO, Dr. Kamuri, had resumed, and I gave her the number. So I think there are other mechanisms which she can pursue to follow up and see how the family can be assisted. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Yeah, Pasaris.
Mr. Speaker, you know, while I know that Parliament has immunity to discuss everything, I mean, I am definitely going to sit with Susan, the wife of the deceased, because what she told me that her husband was diagnosed with Parkinson's, and for me, whatever stage, whatever care that the hospital was providing, which we appreciate, the one thing that they needed to provide, which they never provide, was to keep the patient safe. In the state that he was in, somebody walked into that hospital, slit his neck.
Order, Esther Pasaris. You know, you are not making statements of fact. The investigations are ongoing, and the statements you are making can easily prejudice those investigations. So be very measured in what you are saying, because you cannot say with finality what you are saying when the DCI is investigating a possible homicide. Yes, Bukose, just hold on, Esther.
The doctors who are attending to this patient, the diagnosis is Guillain-Barré syndrome. It is not Parkinson's disease. And that is confirmed by the acting CEO, Dr. Sikilai, and the medical doctors in the hospital. So it was not Parkinson's. And the patient was referred from St. Mary's Hospital with bed sores. That means wherever the patient was not moving. The patient was paralyzed and was in bed and developed wounds on pressure points. And therefore, when the patient was brought to Kenyatta, to Kenyatta with wounds or in the pressure points. And the Kenyatta did tracings and turning of the patient so that these wounds could be able to heal. And the patient was also on NG, nasogastric feeding, was being fed using a tube because the patient could not swallow. So he had to be assisted to feed. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Esther, you're done?
Mr. Speaker, you know, I stand here very disheartened because I hear one story from the family and another story from the chair of the committee. What I want to say is that we have a family that is in distress, a family that is in need, and it's not premature for us to start discussing compensation, especially since from the date the incident happened up to today, if the surveillance cameras were there, I can't understand why we have not made any arrests up to now. If you don't arrest somebody in the next 24 hours or 7 days, then you really have weakened your case. And I really feel that it's time for us to discuss compensation. And I hope that the chair will answer the other questions that were contained in the question, the main question, which include the other patients who have died in our referral facilities. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mukami, I notice you have a request for a statement on the same patient.
Yes, Honorable Speaker.
You may go ahead and seek clarifications from Bukose, the chair.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I request for statement regarding the recent murder of patient in Kenyatta National Hospital. Honorable Speaker, pursuant to the provision. Yes.
I have not given you an opportunity to seek a statement. I've given you an opportunity to seek any clarification on the matter.
Honorable Speaker, personally, I wanted to ask the chair of the Defense Investigation Committee. I wanted him to tell us the status of investigation into the murder of Mr. Gilbert Kinyua in Kenyatta National Hospital, the action being taken to ensure the perpetrators of the crime is arrested and prosecuted without delay. And Honorable Speaker, I wanted to confirm from Honorable Pukose that Mr. Kinyua has a family. He has a wife and children, and he is from Mukurweini. Because from his statement, he has said that he was dumped in Kenyatta Hospital, he doesn't have any family. So I wanted the clarification from the chairman of the committee. Thank you.
Honorable Bukose, did you say he was dumped in Kenyatta Hospital?
Honorable Speaker, I didn't make that kind of statement. And the Hansard can bear me out. What I said is that the patient was referred from St. Mary's Hospital to Kenyatta National Hospital. Yes. It is the other patient who was neighboring Kinyua that he was a patient who was abandoned in the hospital with diabetes and convulsions. After he was treated and recovered, the Kenyatta National Hospital looked for him a place to be taken care of in some of the homes. When he was taken there, after a few days, because of his behavior, which was erratic and unpredictable, the nursing home refused, and he was brought back to Kenyatta. This other patient now is the one who was staying in the next bed to patient Kinyua. So it is Kinyua has a family. He was referred from St. Mary's. I did not say he was abandoned.
Okay. Mukami, on the status of investigations, you can look at the statement. I think he gave a fairly elaborate description on the status of investigations.
Thank you, Honorable
Yes,
Speaker.
Dr. Nyikal. Give Dr. Nyikal the mic.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to add to what our chair said. And, Mr. Speaker, I think there are two issues here. One is the general security in the hospital. Two, the specific circumstances in this case. And I think our chairperson has brought out a very important point, which I think we probably need to take into consideration, that this person died and nobody seems to have seen anything. And yet this person actually was sharing a room with another patient who himself was actually not unconscious, was active. And this person actually had convulsive disorders and disruptive behavior for which he has been sent away from the home that the hospital had found for him. So the important fact here, and I think the investigations will take that into consideration, as our chair said, is this arrangement that there is this other person who is unwell, who has a disorder that can actually affect his mental status. I think we don't probably, as you said, want to go much into that, but I think once that has been brought out, the investigative officers are in, and we did bring out to their attention, to the attention of the investigative officers, that is an extremely important follow-up. But it is now their duty. But the committee did bring out and note that fact. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Kagusha.
Thank you, Speaker. It's important to note that once a patient is actually in a hospital, it becomes the responsibility of the hospital to ensure that the security of that patient is guaranteed. Honorable Speaker, the way the investigation has been going seems to be pointing towards the bedmate or the neighbor to the extent that he's the one who might have terminated the life of this patient. And very important questions linger in mind. How did this patient also have a knife in the hospital? How was that possible? Speaker, what I find also a bit suspect is that whereas this patient was in the custody of the hospital and the hospital was treating this patient and his life was terminated in hospital, the hospital has continued to demand from this very poor family for bills to be paid for the time the patient had been there. This family has no way of raising this money and can't be able to pay those bills. And I'm wondering whether it is right for the hospital, after not guaranteeing the security of this patient and the patient having been killed in the hands of the hospital, for the hospital to go ahead again and demand for the payment of the bill from this patient. Honorable Speaker, I think you should direct that even as a matter of mercy and CSR by the hospital, it should, in the first instance, lift all the bills from this patient so that Mr. Kinyua can be arrested by the family.
Honorable Kagusha.
Yeah.
Esther Passares, who brought the request, is disputing your assertions that the bills are being demanded for payment.
Honorable Speaker,
Yes,
this patient.
Order, Honorable Kinyua.
Honorable.
Honorable Kagusha, yes?
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. While Honorable Kagusha was raising that issue, I got in touch with the CEO KNH, Dr. Njoroge Kamuri, and he informed me that yesterday the relatives came and the hospital informed them that they'll waive the mortuary and the ward fee, everything will be waived. But they continued to demand that we need to see how much is that is going to be waived, and they went with their bill. But as per now, the hospital will waive the mortuary fee. You don't have to pay anything. The hospital will waive the medical bills. There is nothing. You can just organize and have the body taken away without paying anything to the hospital.
Yes, Kagusha?
Yeah, thank you, Honorable Speaker. That would be refreshing, because the brief which I had from the family, and Honorable Speaker, I have visited this family severally, and I've also been in touch with the family, including the clergy, and the brief which I had from the family is that they were being pushed into paying these bills. Honorable Speaker, I have also been in touch with Dr. Kamuri, and he had not made any such commitment. So, Honorable Speaker, if indeed he has made that commitment to the chair of the committee, I want to believe that he's serious about it, it's unanswered now, and that he should ensure that that bill is waived. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Passares, you want to pursue this again? Yes?
Mr. Speaker, I feel that Dr. Nikal mentioned, the way Dr. Nikal talked, it was like the patient that was sitting next to Gilbert is a suspect. For me, I know that there was a knife that was found near the hospital with blood. I saw something in South Africa recently, because they have similar high crime like in Kenya. The police gives updated reports on a weekly basis, on a daily basis, especially on such sensitive cases, so that we are not left speculating on whether it's this way or that way. But for me, if the patient that was next to Gilbert was one that had mental issues, and Gilbert was vulnerable because he was suffering from bed sores, the hospital still has a duty of care. I confirm that the family has said that the bills are being waived. So we're happy about that, but that is not enough. The children need to go to school. Susan needs to make sure she is able to sustain herself. So I think we should be talking compensation, because we should lead by example. The family needs to be compensated, because I don't see the investigations going anywhere, especially if the patient next to him is the prime suspect and he has not been charged yet. Thank you.
Yes, Kajwang.
Mr. Speaker, I think this debate is something which is interesting to all of us, but I suppose that the chair in that committee should investigate it some more, so that we fulfill a mandate that this House has to be able to see to it on the question of, number one, security. And it is not just limited to this patient. I think when the question arose from the honorable member from Nairobi, it questions the question of security. And so the minister concerned, or the agency concerned, should let us have a total picture of security in the institution. Number two, apart from the investigation in terms of determining culpability, there is a whole issue of tortious liability on who has the duty of care. Because a patient is in an institution, for some reason the patient dies, and there are issues to the fact that some people, whether mentally ill or not, are with that patient in that whole home. So who bears that tortious liability of the duty of care? So I think that without us giving so much information on this, probably, Mr. Speaker, with a lot of indulgence, you may want to ask the chair with specific assignments to go and investigate this thing, so that we can have an oversight function or role on these matters? Thank you.
He already said that the DCI will be sharing the progress on investigations on this matter. So as and when he gets material beyond what he has said here, Chairman, you be responsible enough to bring some additional communication to the House. Statement request by Hussein Bare, MB for Tarbaj.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have a statement. It's a request for a statement on the rampant cases of human trafficking in northern Kenya. Honorable Speaker, pursuant to Standing Order 44-2C, I wish to request for a statement from the Chairperson of the Departmental Committee on Administration and Internal Security regarding the rampant cases of human trafficking in northern Kenya. Honorable Speaker, recruitment agencies, though opaque, are operating in Wajir, Mandera, Garissa counties, and they prey on the hopes and dreams of the young generation, enticing them with the promise of a brighter future abroad. Due to the high cost of living and lack of job opportunities in the country, the young generation accept the opportunities to travel abroad offered by the recruiters. Unfortunately, the victims are handed over to human traffickers locally and abroad who demand ransom from their families for them to be released. The act of recruiting, transporting, transferring, harboring, or receiving individuals using threats, coercion, abduction, fraud, deception, abuse of power, or position of vulnerability is done for the purpose of exploitation. Honorable Speaker, it is against this background that I request for a statement from the Chairperson of the Departmental Committee on Administration and Internal Security on the following. One, a comprehensive report on the investigation into human trafficking in northern Kenya and in the country, including the investigation into the operation of involved recruitment agencies. Measures being taken to ensure that the families and individuals who suffer these atrocities get injustice and rehabilitation. The long-term measures being implemented to address cases of human trafficking in the country and formalize labor export from the country. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
2 weeks. Give him the mic.
Honorable Speaker, I want to indulge you on this because from what I hear, the honorable member is talking about Kenyans being exported outside of the country beyond our territorial boundaries. And it's my honest opinion that this could be more handled by the Foreign Affairs.
Where the question is about human trafficking in northern Kenya, not out of northern Kenya.
But beyond our territorial boundaries, Honorable Speaker.
Okay, Clerk, can you check and see whether we can reassign the statement to Foreign Affairs? Be that as it may, whichever committee handles, they will respond to you in 2 weeks. Rahab Mukami, yours is spent, so we skip that. Joseph Munyoro, MP Kigumo.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I rise to request for a statement regarding the disappearance of persons in my constituency. Honorable Speaker, pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 44-2C, I wish to request for a statement from the Chairperson of the Departmental Committee on Administration and Internal Security regarding the disappearance of persons from Kigumo constituency. Honorable Speaker, an alarming trend has emerged regarding the disappearance of persons in Mareira sublocation in Kigumo constituency. Honorable Speaker, Mr. David Gitau Maina of ID number 20 as listed there disappeared on 27 of December 2024, and his whereabouts remain unknown to this day. According to his family members, Mr. Gitau went out to complete a large purchase transaction and his phone went silent. He has not been seen since. On the same day, Mr. David Jehia Mashari